So here we are again. Very good evening, everyone. And we are back on our final tasting of Portuguese wines. And the idea over here is to try to find a sense of place or regionality using sort of continentality, altitude, so proximity to the ocean, mainly using natural influences to somehow guide us through the regions that Portugal, the benchmark regions that Portugal has to offer. So we have two red wines, wine number 5 and wine number 6. They come from classic wine regions, red wine regions in Portugal. So who could help me or describe wine number 5? Can anyone share your thoughts?
I will try. It's a deep purple color, medium plus intensity in the aromas. The main characteristic is black fruits like blackberries, blackcurrant, black cherry. I also felt some licorice and some black pepper.
Okay.
So it has some spices, not sweet spices. It's a medium plus to high acidity with high alcohol and full body. So I found it to be a well-balanced wine with high tannins, fine tannins, and on the mouth, I could feel that the fruit characteristics are very ripe. I even felt some jam, some plum, almost dry plum. And I think it's a very good wine. I wouldn't say outstanding, but it's a very good wine because it's well balanced and full with tannins and fruit concentration, good tannins, fine tannins. And I think it's good to drink now, but it would age well for a few years.
Does anybody has anything else to add to that tasting note?
I found some bitterness, slight bitterness.
Where? On final palate? Yeah, on the final palate. Yeah.
No. Yeah. Always more in the final palate, in the middle to the final of my tongue. But I always get bitterness. So.
Okay. Would you say it's bitterness, or would you say it's more of a roast, toast, coffee sort of thing?
I would say bitterness.
Okay. All right. Is there any clue from this tasting note? What sort of climate can we find this sort of wine? Not region, but climate. No. Is there anything here that leads us somewhere in Portugal?
I think it's warm climate.
Why?
Because we have not just very ripe, but some jammy fruit and high alcohol.
Okay.
And the thing that puzzles me is the acidity. But that could be due to some blend, depending. That's what I thought. Because they could have corrected the acidity, because it's quite unusual to have these jammy notes along with high acidity. I don't think it's from a place where they had cooling influences because of the characteristics of the wine.
Yeah, I agree. But I don't think it's a wine that has a high acidity. I think it's medium to medium plus sort of thing.
Yeah,
I think it's enough to
medium
keep the wine
plus.
fresh. Yeah. It's and it's not a sort of acidity that keeps you salivating. It's a sort of acidity, like a soft acidity, that adds some freshness to the palate, but that allows you to have a second sip.
Yes.
Yeah, second glass. Okay, yeah.
May I say that when the acidity is soft, usually is not added, or you can have a soft acidity if it is added?
I think we need a winemaker.
Yeah,
that has
that's
experience
for
on
the questions for
acidifying.
her.
I don't know. Do you have an experience on that, Eloisa?
No, we don't have lack of acidity here.
Yeah,
At
I
all.
guess so. I guess so.
I remember once I did a tasting of Chilean sparkling wines, Valdivieso and this kind of things, but it was like 1 or 3 years ago. And I remember, and we compared Aurora's sparkling wine, Charmal, with Valdivieso and others. But one of the things that I felt was that it's like, I don't know, how could I say that, but...
it's like a sharp, isn't it?
Yes, like drinking Coke. I don't know, like something that picked, I don't know, maybe sharp. But, and this was something that just, that was one of the biggest difference between Aurora's sparkling and Chilean sparkling.
I remember tasting a very good red wine from San Francisco Valley. I think it was a Syrah from Miolo, their premium wine. It was very good, but we could notice that they had added tartaric acid.
Yeah, sometimes it becomes a bit disjointed. Yeah.
This one?
Okay, and we mentioned climate here. Can we? Is there anything onto this wine, either aromas or either? Is there anything that we could identify regionality here?
Thiago, Eloisa thought the wine is well balanced. I think it's not that well balanced because acidity is not high enough to match the alcohol level. You really feel your mouth get warm.
But isn't that a characteristic of wines that comes from a warm climate? For example, Napa Valley, Cabernet Sauvignon, or Malbec, generic Malbec coming from Mendoza, or even, I don't know, I tasted an outstanding Malbec, Bramare, from Paul Hobbs, that the acidity was medium. It was a bomb fruit, and the alcohol was sticking out, but you know, all the layers and so on. I don't think it's just about the amount of acidity. It's more about the role of acidity. Is acidity still playing a role into this wine? And I think it's still playing a role. The acidity is still there. It's just not a very refreshing wine. So therefore, I would say it's more a wine that needs food, that needs company, as opposed to drink on its own. Also, I think that this could be a sign of quality as well as. So anyway, but let's move. Hold on.
Why? Why?
Well, because I think that a much higher quality wine will have slightly more acidity and more penetrating acidity when compared to a much simpler wine. So Even when you are in warm regions, you will notice that, for example, let's go back to Napa Valley. If you taste, for example, Tucalun from Napa Valley, from Robert Mondavi, you see that the acidity is screaming high, very refreshing, making the wine extremely powerful, as opposed to the entry-level estate Cabernet Sauvignon from Robert Mondavi, where the wine is more soft and round and easy drinking straight away. So it also relates to quality.
Did someone else besides Thiago find it just medium acidity here? For me, it's medium plus.
Yeah,
and it's
medium
totally,
to medium plus.
at the nose, you really feel, I agree with her, it's a kind of a jammy thing from a hot, then all of a sudden comes all this acidity. But on the other hand, I agree with you, you don't really, it's different. It's in, as if it was more in the middle of the tongue, more than on the sides, which is kind of strange, so.
Yeah, I put medium plus acidity.
Medium plus, me too. Yeah. Someone else, medium plus, or everyone wants?
I put medium plus too.
Yeah, it's more, again, it's more in between medium to medium plus as opposed to medium plus and high. So it's not high, it's not a wine that has high acidity.
Yeah.
Make sense? Right.
Yes.
Shall we taste the second wine? Who can share your thoughts on the second wine? Anyone?
I can.
Thank you.
I don't know if it's right, but anyway, I liked this one much more than the first one. It looked like more rounder. It's a deep ruby color, and the nose was not so intense than the other one, but much more elegant. With the wood would come right away, the chocolate, coffee, and also it has a lot of fruits, but black fruits like red plum, black plum, and also red fruits like raspberry berry, some violet. There was a really floral scent. And what else? And a creamy aroma at the end, some licorice, some spice. The fruits, they were just ripe. They were not overripe, but they are very elegant. And it's a dry wine. It's a medium plus acidity, the medium plus tannins, and then tannins looks ripe and high alcohol. The one I thought, the first one I thought was a medium alcohol, but this second one's really high alcohol with a really full body and a medium plus flavor intensity. And in the mouth, what I felt first was a kind of a herbal taste, like bay leaves and also in the black fruits in general. In the mouth, there wasn't so many red fruits, blackberries and blueberries, and a hint of chocolate in the back. And the medium plus finish. I thought it's a very good wine. It comes from a warm climate. The fruits were not so ripe. And there is some very good wood treatment. Some new, some a little bit used. It's suitable for bottle aging, but it will last a long time. And I also noted who would buy this wine. It's a very good wine, and the price would be for me like around $15, a little bit higher.
Okay.
Okay.
Any sense of climatic influence here?
Less than this one than the other one. And the other one, I thought that there would be some warming influence because of the acidity and the lower body, but this one, no, it's just a warm climate.
Okay. Can anybody else help me? Does anybody differs or has any different view on this tasting?
To
I
me,
never-
there's an
Sorry.
aroma here that covers every other aroma. That's the only thing I can smell. And to me, it was a faulty wine. So
Okay.
Thiago, I
Go
felt cloves here. I don't know
Yeah,
if it's,
Mm.
I'm correct.
I
but
agree. A lot of
Very
cloves.
strong
Yeah.
for me.
Sure.
I felt at the beginning, I had more or less the same impression as Ligia, though I don't think it is as full-bodied as the other one. I think the tannins are smoother, it's rounder, it's velvetier on the mouth. The first aroma that I felt was olives. And then afterwards some leather and some smoke. And in the mouth also some smoke and some tobacco leaf. But I agree, it's a very good wine, but I think it's a slightly simpler wine, even though it's very good.
In my opinion, the second one is a little bit more elegant than the first one. I
Yes,
think the first one is
Yes.
too much. It's like in the second one, you can feel the 3 layers that I could not feel clearly the 3 layers in my mouth in the first one. The
Yes.
second, primary, secondary, and tertiary. And for me, it's more elegant than the first. So I would say both may come from a warm climate, but the second one may have more cooling influence. But then we think that the acidity is higher in the first. So I don't know.
and I had the sensation that the second one has less acidity than the first.
Me too. Me too.
So I think it's a different style. They may have more or less the same quality. I evaluated both of them as very good, but they have different styles, because the first one, it remembers us more like a South American style. When Thiago talked about Argentinian Malbec, it comes immediately to mind. And the other one has a different style, because, as you said, Rosanna, you can feel the fruit and the wood, the primary, the tertiary aromas. It's different. It's more subtle.
I'm screwed because I don't find it like having high alcohol. On the nose set tells you something, and then on the palate, I agree it's different. I don't think, for me, it's just good quality, and that's it. Even the first one. I must say, I saw the TC on the cork, so I guess which wine it was, the first one, not the second one. So, gosh, and I also find some bitterness. It's kind of a grippy thing. I don't think the tannins are smooth at all. It's not that it's but it's not.
Where on the second one?
On the second one. Or maybe it's just me. I should have eaten before.
May I say the tannins are coarse in the second one? I think it's not, for me, it's also not smooth. It's more too coarse than smooth.
I'm usually so picky on tannins because I'm very sensible to them, but maybe my bottle is a little different.
Okay.
Or the temperature.
And if we were to compare not just quality but influences, where can we get influences here? What are the clues from the tasting notes that you guys all agree on the first and the second? How can we use tasting notes to place you somewhere in Portugal? Because that's what you have. You'll face a sparkling examination, and then there will be a question regarding either what's the grape variety on that sparkling wine, what's the method of production, And you need to say, well, because of these and that I was able to taste on a glass, I think it's that grape or it's that method of production. So because of what you have tasted in a glass, how can you place it somewhere in Portugal? Because that's the ability, that's the skill, that's the muscle that you need to use it. And tasting group is the best way for you to learn from each other, because you go on and say, oh, you know what, Elo said something really nice, let me take a note. Oh, Gabriel said something else. Oh, let me take a note of it, you know, because I can use that argument in a different context. Or let me say, you know, let me write down what, you know. So it's very important for you to say what you want to say what you think, and then you can, once you say and make a note of what you said, you can rethink and say, oh, have a second thought. Is that really true? Is that what you want to say? Is there a very good argument? So I tasted 2 different wines here. For me, the first wine is that sort of big and bold. It has different aromas, different layers. I don't think it's medium ruby and medium purple. I think it's ruby. However, you can see some traces of youthfulness on the color, and that's very good. So I put it 45 degrees, and I see more red than purple, but I do see that the wine's quite young in a way. And then I get sort of a black and red fruit coming from more of wild berries. So we can talk about strawberries, we can talk about mulberry, we can talk about a little bit of cherries, we can talk about a little bit of plum, but then the fruit go towards like a jamminess. And when you think on a fruit, it comes from unripe, just ripe, ripe, overripe, jam, dry, and then before it becomes jam can go, it's either jam, is baked, stew. So you have to define what's our fruit, and according to the perfume of the fruit, then that is a clue, and you have to be able to read. It's like I have a pet. You know, your dog is not running around. It's being all day sitting down, doesn't want to eat. It's probably sick, right? You need to be able to read that, and that needs to tell you something. And you have to have a critical thinking and say, what is that telling me? So we all agreed that the first wine has a jamminess. So it means that it's hot, but not too hot. The alcohol level, it's high. So it confirms that it's coming from a hot climate. The alcohol, the body is full. The tannins are there. It's medium plus. It's quite fine, but it's medium plus. It's there. It has different, it's a medium concentration of fruit and medium finish, and it has different flavors. And then the end, the finish can be bitter, can be like a coffee toast or coffee beans or toasted beans, as opposed to really bitter, like a medicine. It's not medicine. So you do get flavors, and then you get a little bit of bitterness. What is that telling you? Does it refer to quality, volume of a production, for example, or does it say, oh, you know what, I have been aged in oak for a short period of time, like an old oak, for example? You know, that could be it. But it does has a good refreshing point to this wine, which sends me a signal saying, you know, the acidity is quite through here. The acidity is quite original, if I may say so, because it's in line with high alcohol, is in line with the jamminess. If the acidity was really high, I would go like and say that's something wrong here. So everything looks original to me. And for me, it's coming from a more continental climate, you know, like when it's hot is really hot, when it's cold is really cold. no altitude influence, no sea influence, and so on. So that for me is the first wine. Full body. It was built to impress you. Okay. Very good quality. But when it comes to the second wine reminds me of those warm region where they are making grape selection, and they have a lot of dehydrated grapes, overripe grapes, that they really don't want you to make a wine out of it, you know, because they're selecting wine to make the Grand Cru wine. So they just want berries that are just ripe. Berries that are overripe, they're not going to use for the Grand Cru wine. However, they have noticed that they have like, I don't know, like 5 tons of those grapes. So they crash that juice and they make a wine that, 1, has moderated acidity, 2, has this sort of tin preserved fruit. So what I get on the nose, the aroma that you're talking about, Gabriel, for me is like we are not used to having strawberries coming from a tin. We're not used to having any sort of a red fruit, any sort of fruit coming from a tin. We are blessed in Brazil. We get fresh fruit. We go to the supermarket. We go to the street fair. But in Europe, it's quite common for you to buy fruit, to eat fruit out of a can. So once you open it, that's the aromas and that's the smell that you are getting. What does it tell you? It tells you they're not using the best grape. They're not using the fresh grape. They are using dehydrated and overripe grape. First thing. Second thing is that how can they manage? I think it's dry, although on the mid palate, it has a sweetness to it. So how can they make a wine that is dry, that has a sweetness on the mid palate with medium alcohol, like a 13.5% alcohol level? George Junior, how can you make a wine that has this sort of a generosity of fruit, but with moderated alcohol? How do you do it? How do you make it? So the juice is fermenting. The juice is there. The yeast is fermenting. How can you make a wine with 13.5% alcohol level with this generosity of fruit? What do you do?
I don't know, really.
Do we have a winemaker here? We do. I can see her. She's right there. Okay, winemaker. What do you do?
Sorry, I was distracted for a minute.
Okay.
What was the question?
So, yeah, the question is, how can you make a wine that is theoretically dry, but it has this generosity of fruit and flavor mid palate, and you have 13% alcohol level, 13.5. So it's medium alcohol level. How do you do that?
Baixa temperatura.
So you lower the temperature for what?
To stop the fermentation.
You stop the fermentation. So you can make a wine with 10% alcohol by stopping fermentation, or 15% alcohol by letting you ferment it to dry. So once you stop the fermentation, so the fermentation here is not our gear. The alcohol level is not the gear. The gear is the state of the fruit in the nose, and the state of the fruit in the nose is like a tinned, cooked, baked. So I had like clams.
But you think this is not a dry wine?
I think it's a dry to off dry, but I'll say it's a dry wine. And for me, the nose, it has this sort of a tinned strawberry, or like
Do you think, Thiago, that this thing that I described as olives, it's something related to that?
Yeah. Syrah from warm climate has this. It has a name. I will research and send it back to you guys. But it does. You do get this sort of a black olive part of the aromas to Syrah, especially when it's cultivated into really warm climate.
Warm.
You get that in Barossa, you get that in Chile, you get that in many warm regions, and it has a specific name to describe it. But for me, it has sort of tinned strawberries, jam, baked plums, cooked fruit, stewed fruit, a little bit cinnamon and cloves. I had cinnamon as opposed to cloves, but they're quite similar in a way. I mean, it's dry, medium body, medium alcohol, really soft tannins, like a medium tannins, but soft tannins, soft, medium acidity, medium body, medium minus finish, quite diluted. The finish is diluted. Have a second thought. The wine is quite diluted. And what you get in the mid palate is more of a sugar as opposed to flavor. Voila. You know what I mean? And it's wine dimensional. It's really black plum and like a black mulberry sort of thing. Gone. So, but it's quite round and soft, and most of consumers, they'll love it. They'll go on and say, hey, give me more of that juice. Can I have a box of it? Can you do 6 per 5? You get 6 and you buy 5, and they go crazy, and it's fine. But if you were to place it in between, if you were to place in a line, where is this wine placed? So you have a whole range of wines. Hosanna, where is he placed? You have all the tiers. Where is he placed?
No, I am completely wrong in my, I cannot say anything because.
That's fine. I mean,
now I understand when you say the sweetness, now I can feel it, but.
That's fine. Where would you place it? Do you think it's right here at the top? Or do you think it's right at the bottom?
Well, I'd say
Thiago,
medium to the bottom.
I would say it's around 12. Now that you said all this, I would say.
Yeah, I think my palate is crazy tonight.
From what you described of this winemaking process, I would expect more sugar, more residual sugar in this wine than we feel.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much sugar that is. I think we can find out. But I have tasted several Barossa Shiraz and wines from Australia from really hot regions. And usually when they try to make even wines from United States, like entry-level Cabernet Sauvignon from $5. And they taste quite similar in that sense. I mean, the fruit is overripe, it's jammy, it's baked. There is this generosity and roundness of fruit and tannins, low tannins. So I suspect that is like more an off dry as opposed to dry. And off dry would be like 5 grams of sugar sort of thing. It doesn't have to be much sugar. But the point here is,
could this be a blend with some very dry white wine, to reduce the sugar level?
I mean, there are many things that you can do to reduce the residual sugar. One of them could be what? Is that a winemaker here? How can you reduce sugar? I mean,
It's another thing that I never do.
Okay. You actually need more sugar.
Yes, body. Sometimes.
So, there's several ways that you can do, but reverse osmosis is one of them that you can use that to reduce sugar, for example, if you want to.
I think the second wine, when you started talking about where do the wines come from, where do they put us, I would say the number 5 could be a Douro wine. Because of its quality and structure. You have ripe fruit, you have this full body, it's made to impress, as you said, and it is. And number 6, it's more the Alentejo style. It's easy to drink, it's easy to sell in bigger quantities and bigger volumes. I had this impression.
Okay.
So I guess.
It's a good call, but you need to structure why. And maybe once you structure, you might think that it is the other way around. So let's think on the first wine. For me, there is something here that I'm very familiar with. Are you able to pick it up on the first wine, just sort of a herbal and quite quite green, like a bay leaf, quite a oregano on the aroma? Can you pick that up?
The first wine?
The first one.
Yes.
You get this sort of vegetal to the nose.
Yes.
Do you also get this sort of a plumminess and richness of red fruit on a palate?
Yes.
And I think that the tannins are quite rustic in a way.
Thiago?
It does have some rusticity
do you
to it.
feel, Thiago, do you feel some volatile acidity here?
No, I don't.
On the first one?
Not in the first and not in the second. So then when we go, hold on a second. And then when we go to the second wine, so the first wine has this a bit rustic tannins. When we go to the second wine, the tannins it's slightly more polished and it's slightly more thinner. So it's more sweeter. So for me, the tannins here are way soft and polished and taken care of. And then this bakiness is telling me it's coming from a very warm region. Perhaps even it could be the case. Now I'm speculating that this wine it was kept under a region that was quite warm. Like they were unable, once they bottled the wine, they were unable to keep refrigerated somehow. So for me, this is also just bakiness on the nose and sort of a licorice or cinnamon or sweetness of dry fruit. Also tells me a story that was quite often common into the late 80s and early 90s of the wines of this region. So when you think of those two characteristics, and every single characteristic, either aromatic, either palate, like dryness or tannins or acidity, should tell you a story. So would you like me to conclude my way of thinking? Right. So last tasting, when we mentioned about those two red wines, I did mention about this vegetal note that is very, very common into the wines of Alentejo, and that's due to Trincadeira. Some producers love it, others hates it. If you're able to pick that up in the wine that we tasted from Beira Interior, you should be able to recognize this aroma here, which is very, very common and is a benchmark. And that's one of the reasons why I have decided to use this wine, which is the Trincadeira factor on the palate. And if WSET or CMS or any other institution was to select a wine from Alentejo to you, it should be a wine that had a lot of Trincadeira to it, because it's a benchmark. It's part of the Alentejo region. And the alcohol level can be in warm regions. The alcohol level can be worked out. You can manipulate. Also, the rusticity of tannins. It's one of the points. It's one of the characteristics of the wines coming from Alentejo. And then when you go to the second wine, although I was to expect a lot more punch and concentration and so on, And also the price. I think that this wine should be sold way cheaper than it actually tastes like. So in Brazil, the wine is quite expensive. I think it's not worth it at all. I was expecting more punch, more concentration. The alcohol level should be on the high side. And I was also expecting a little bit of minerality, because sometimes red wines coming from Douro, they have a little bit more minerality. But once I've tasted the wine, I realized that it is an entry level of a wine from Douro, because especially because of this bake fruit. And wines from Douro, very old style, coming from the 80s and early 90s, they had this sort of a baked style. And this bakeness is basically the bottles that were preserved, they were lying around in the not tasting room, but in the warehouse, without no air conditioning or temperature control. So the wines, they would bake, the flavors would be baked flavors into the Douro. And that is too often common for entry-level wines from Douro. There are several great wines from Douro that are very juicy, very big, but with controlled alcohol, like a 13 and a half, not really 14 or 15. And they usually have a much penetrating acidity and very present, very lingering acidity, which is not the case here.
Could you
Is this
say,
Douro Superior? Sorry, Brian.
I don't think it's Douro Superior. I think it's more on a Baixo Corgo, because of the acidity, which makes it much warmer. Shall we see the wines? Shall we review the wines? Gabriel, you were going to ask.
I was going to ask you if these grapes could have come from a vineyard closer to the river, warmer.
Yeah, the second wine, the Douro wine, is coming from a vineyard that it is about 250 meters above sea level, which is not that cool enough. We should somehow be able to identify this sort of a cooling influence, but it's definitely not the case of this Douro wine. This is more on the entry-level side as opposed to a true Douro wine, I'm afraid. Although those two winemakers, Celso Pereira and Jorge Alves, they're great winemakers, but this is not reflected into this wine, in my point of view. The first one,
2016, so it's already 5 years old almost. So
yeah, but these are wines that usually last quite a good time, 10 years. Fine.
Do you know the blends? Can you say about the blends?
We can find out online.
I have one question.
Sure.
What about the acidity of the first wine? Talking about Alentejo, continental, warm. How can you get this high acidity?
There's two grape varieties on the first wine that has natural high acidity, which is Trincadeira, and the second one is Alicante Boucher. Is Alicante Boucher? No, Tinta Roriz, Trincadeira. No, a French. Let me get the wine.
they don't get Alicante and Douro, Alicante Boucher.
Not Douro. We are talking about the
number one,
the
first one. Oh yeah, Thiago Cabasso. I know he has a lot of Alicante. Well, let's see. Yeah, let me just be sure.
Yeah, let me get the. Yeah, so it's made out of Trincadeira, Alicante Boucher, and Aragonés. So Aragonés gives you this sort of red plummy fruit, The Trincadero will give you this really herbal notes and freshness on the nose and the palate. And Alicante Boucher will give you just sort of a more exotic and mulberry and so on, but also high acidity. So that's why Alicante Boucher has been planted in many warm regions, because it adds this sort of exotic note to the wine, contributing to this high acidity. And that's one of the reasons why this is a regional vinho alentejano as opposed to Alentejo wine, because of the Alicante Boucher. Okay, but the Trincadera is the main ingredient here, which plays a big role to the wine. And then when we go to the second wine, let me find it online. Hold on a second.
Is Trincadera, Alicante Boucher, and
Tinta Roriz.
Aragonés.
Aragonés, yeah. And then the second wine is a blend of Touriga Franca, Touriga Nacional, Tinta Barroca, Tinta Roriz, and Souzão. 13% alcohol, yeah. Which again, I was expecting. The back label says 13.5, but online says 13, so it makes the wine quite. For me, the quality is slightly under quality, as I was expecting from Douro. And I also think that the wine is still very old-fashioned in a way, because of these baked plums and baked fruit.
Thiago, please, what's your call for the quality of the second wine?
I think the second wine is good, as opposed to very good. I wouldn't call it acceptable, but I would say good. For me, this is a wine that should cost like €4, €4.50, €5. It's the sort of wine that the Portuguese, they'll go, they'll buy, they'll enjoy, they'll have fun, and they'll forget about it. They'll just think.
And how much is here?
$9.9.
And Thiago, please, the first wine, do you think it's suitable for bottle aging?
I don't think that it is a wine that was made thinking on bottle aging. I think that it's a wine that could hold, but not aging. Thiago Cabasso is he's a great winemaker, producer. Although this wine wasn't made by him, was made by Suzanne Steban, and which was the winemaker of the year. She's got many awards and so on and so on. But I think it's a wine made to be drunk now. This is one of the entry levels of Thiago Cabasso. If I'm not mistaken, the Torre de Extremos is a wine that is sold by around 80 to 90 reais, and the second wine, the Douro, is a wine that is sold around 150, 140 reais, which I think it's overpriced.
I found it for 100 reais.
Okay, 100 reais. Still unworth it when compared to the first wine. I think that the first wine is much nicer, much better, tasting really well.
Is what's the vintage of the first wine?
2019.
19.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So the takeaway from this session. Yeah.
The second one is making me sick. It's.
Oh, don't drink it.
No, I'm not going to drink it.
Okay.
I think it's the first wine that I'm not going to drink it.
Okay.
It's too sweet for me. For me, it's more like a dry wine, and for me it's acceptable to good. It's
I-
too much sugar.
I think that your
For me.
neighbor will love it. If you ring the bell of your neighbor and say, you know what, I've tasted far too many wines, I was studying really hard, and there's a few wines that I can't, handle it. So would you like for tonight? And he will love it. He will enjoy it.
I
So-
think maybe for for young people, maybe they would love it.
They will. I'm sure they will.
For sure.
There's a few takeaways from this session. First of them is that sometimes the alcohol level and the tannins and the aromas, like the first one, the Geminis, can lead you to a warm climate. Sometimes it's not the alcohol level that will lead you to the warm climate. It's the state of the fruit. So you have to be able to judge the state of the fruit, which was the case of the second wine, because the alcohol level can be manipulated. You can stop fermentation. And by stopping fermentation, naturally, you have residual sugar. So when you are counting the alcohol level, you have to consider the residual sugar. Sometimes the residual sugar is a giveaway for quality. Sometimes it's not. So the residual sugar here is playing a role as rounding up and giving a sense of texture. But when you really think about the flavor, you understand that it is diluted, and therefore, plus the residual sugar, and therefore is one dimensional, therefore the quality is entry-level, lower quality. And then when you consider the bakiness of the fruit and so on, the state of the fruit, you are able to understand that when they select the grapes, they have used the overripe grapes to make a second quality wine, or a third quality wine from a warm region. So that's a giveaway. If you only guide yourself by the alcohol level, you're gonna say, no, this is coming from not too warm region because it's 13%. How about the residual sugar? And remember, the residual sugar is able to mask the tannins and so on and so on. Okay, so that is a real point here. The second wine is coming from a much warmer region than the first, in a sense, because it's in Baixo Corgo, therefore only 250 meters above sea level. So it's really warm when compared to the Extremos, which is the first wine coming from the Extremos region, a sub-region within Alentejo, which is, in a way, it's more original, it's more natural. Makes sense? In Alentejo. So those are the giveaways, not necessarily the acidity. I hope you have enjoyed. I hope you have liked. I hope you have learned something. I hope I was able to share any insights of those wines to you. Okay? Questions before we finish and enjoy the first wine?
Good point.
If you're not going to give away to your neighbor, get any frozen meat that is frozen and let it defrost into the wine. And tomorrow the wine will be black. The meat will be black. But the flavors and aromas of the meat, once you grill it, will be very fruity and it's amazing. Do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Guys, enjoy your
Thiago,
evening. Yeah.
I took the wine to a professional one, my wife.
Okay, and she loved it.
She said the wine was simple, sweet, super sweet. So I think she has the point.
Yeah,
Super sweet.
I think women taste way better than us, and they have the final say, and they are always right. So
always.
See you soon. Take care. Have a good week.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Thiago.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.